Joe Rogan, it is blowing up right now all over X that Joe Rogan is attending church. He has been attending church, according to biblical manuscript expert Wesley Huff. So I guess Wesley Huff was doing a podcast with some folks, and I don't know if look, I hope Wesley Huff got permission from Joe to drop this because that is a bombshell. This is huge. So let's hear this conversation and see what Wesley Huff says about how Joe Rogan's conversion is going. People were suspecting that this was going to happen soon because of that clip that came out, which we'll watch also, where he said, I'm sticking with Jesus." So let's see how things have progressed since then.
Joe Rogan and I have had on and off communication since then. I can tell you for a fact that he is attending a church and that that has been a consistent thing. And so, things are happening, and he's a very inquisitive individual, and I think for the better, in that he's communicating with me and other people in his life who are influences that can speak into these issues of reliability and trustworthiness and verisimilitude of something like the pages of scripture, and where he should and shouldn't be looking for the information in regards to that. So I am very encouraged by the communication that I have been able to have with him and others over these last few months in this kind of crazy season that I find myself in. But
That's crazy. So he says that Joe Rogan not only has been attending church, but he says it's been a consistent thing. And he's in his communications with Joe has seen some very encouraging signs, it sounds like. Okay, that's exciting. That's really cool. Now there's this whole conversation about should we even care about celebrity conversions? I think we should. I think Joe Rogan is such an influential person. It's argued that Joe Rogan basically decided the 2024 election. And I don't think you can really dispute that very much because when Trump went on the 2024, or when Trump went on the Joe Rogan podcast during the election season of 2024, that really shifted things. And Trump was doing all these podcasts. So these podcasts have a lot of influence. And Joe Rogan is the largest podcast. So if podcasts have enough influence to sway an election, then I think it's fair to say that they also have influence to sway people's thoughts on religion. That's a big deal.
We're seeing what I don't think is an exaggeration to say somewhat of a resurgence in interest in these topics that we've been talking about, even the nitty gritty. We had someone who reached out to us recently at Apologetics Canada, who is probably the last bricks and mortar Christian bookstore that I've ever heard of. But they said, we have people walking through our doors asking, young people, teenagers, saying, I want a Bible. All my friends are reading this thing. So if the Bible is, becoming popular with teenagers, then something is happening and the Lord is moving.
That's a great sign. And that is something that studies have been showing as well, that Gen Z is becoming more religious and they're becoming more Catholic as well. In the UK, Gen Z Catholics outnumber Gen Z Anglicans, which is a wonderful sign. So things are moving in the right direction, and it's really exciting to watch. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this is a Jubilee year. I don't think that's a coincidence. Jamie, pull up the Daily Rosary. This episode is caffeinated by 7 Weeks Coffee. If you click the link in the description or use code SWS at checkout, you will get 10% off your order, you'll be helping out the channel, and you will be funding the pro-life cause. Thank you, 7 Weeks Coffee. Let's get back to the video. All right, so this is the clip that everybody, kind of lost their minds about, where Joe Rogan said, Jesus makes more sense. I'm interested to just watch this again.
Always been something. Well, wouldn't it be crazy if there wasn't something at one point in time? That seems even crazier. Then there always has been something. Because if it's just something, if it's just the nature of everything, there is always something, right?
Right.
It couldn't be nothing and then all of a sudden everything. That seems
because what started that? What kicked that off?
Exactly.
What snapped its fingers?
That's McKenna's great line. Terrence McKenna had a great line about the difference between science and religion. Is that science only asks you for one miracle. I want you to believe in one miracle, the Big Bang.
Yeah.
That is something that never made sense to me. And people have, I forgot the atheist guy's name, but I guess he's a physicist or something. And he was touring with Richard Dawkins Someone in the chat will probably know. But he basically wrote this thing about something coming from nothing. And essentially what he did was redefine what nothing means and say, well, it was in a vacuum and there was like this energy that was very close together, and then everything, and it heated up, and then everything, the Big Bang happened. Okay, but that's not nothing. That's something still. So nobody has been able to explain how everything came from nothing, except by redefining what nothing means as meaning not nothing, which is not a satisfying answer.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
It's because it really is true, and
Yes.
it's funny
Lawrence Krauss is who I'm talking about.
because people would be incredulous about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but yet they're convinced that the entire universe was smaller than the head of a pin, and for
Right.
no reason that anybody's adequately explained to me that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. No.
Instantaneously became
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't buy that.
I'm sticking with Jesus on
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus makes more sense.
Joe Rogan.
It really does make more sense. That's why people bring up the Big Bang now as like that disproves Christianity. But bro, the person who came up with the Big Bang Theory, the father of the Big Bang Theory, was a Catholic priest and mathematician. And all of the atheist scientists, even Einstein, were saying, no, we all know the universe is eternal. The universe didn't begin at any point. It was eternal. But then it turns out that nobody's been able to create a working model of the universe that is eternal. So kind of seems like the Big Bang is legit, and it is in line with the Genesis account of creation, where there was nothing, and then God said, boom, something, and then everything came into existence. It's an oversimplification of Genesis, to be fair, but people didn't like the Big Bang Theory because it seemed too superstitious. So a lot of people are concerned that Joe Rogan is going to join a version of Christianity that is not their team or whatever. Because all of this seemed to have started when Wesley Huff went on Joe Rogan's podcast. And here's a clip from when that happened.
I think I really like the way that Jordan Peterson articulates it, but I think he misses the forest for the trees.
How so?
In that he sees Jesus as an archetype. And I don't think actually even Jesus gives you the opportunity to see him as the archetype. Because I have this love-hate relationship with all of Peterson's stuff, because he seems to get so much right where he walks up to the line, but he doesn't want to cross over.
And is the crossover, you think, connected to a life in academia? Or
No.
What do you think it is?
I wonder, and I'd love to talk to him about this, like how do you remedy this issue that, because he seems to think that the concept of Jesus as an example is more important than the actual flesh and blood first century itinerant Jewish preacher who was crucified and rose from the dead physically, which is the claim of the Gospels.
So this was, everyone was so excited about this. I remember just refreshing Joe Rogan's page to see, like, when is he going to post this? And everyone was getting mad because he was taking a long time to post it, because he probably, people who do these long form conversational podcasts, they pre-record stuff way in advance and they release it probably weeks or sometimes even months later. So everyone was like, because people don't know that, people are like, oh, is Joe Rogan going to not release it? Is he going to keep it private because he got owned on Christianity or something? But he released it, obviously. And everybody was really hyped about it. I was really hyped about it. I made a video responding to some of the claims that Wesley Huff made about the Protestant Reformation that were just not true. But this was a very helpful episode for Joe himself, and probably for a lot of the millions of listeners that listen to it, obviously, to learn a little bit more about Christianity, some of the intellectual tradition that comes from Christianity, some of the reasons for why we believe these things, like why we believe Jesus rose from the dead, what we believe about the resurrection, all of that stuff, because people who have no idea are probably just thinking these people just have a made-up book full of made-up stories, and they just believe this stuff because it makes them feel nice, which is pretty much what Joe Rogan thought about Christianity for a long time. So this was a very helpful conversation for a lot of people. I'm glad that Wesley Huff went on there. I know he received a lot of criticism, including from myself, for some of the things he said in this conversation, but I think overall it was a positive. But so people are worried because they're like, okay, well, Wesley Huff seems to be the person he's talking to about this stuff, about the reliability of the ancient manuscripts and things like that. So maybe, Joe's going to become just some like Protestant. I don't know what denomination Wesley is a part of, but people are worried that now he's going to become a Protestant because, that's who Joe was in conversation with. And I understand that concern. I do wish Joe talked to some more Catholics. It'd be really good to see Voice of Reason on his show. That'd be great. Or even Trent Horn, because they could get into social issues as well. Trent Horn talks about a variety of issues. That'd be really cool. So people are worried. But they forget that Joe did have on somebody who calls himself a Catholic, although he rejects the current pope, which means you are out of communion with the church, which means you're not really a Catholic. You're a sedevacantist. But Mel Gibson calls himself a Catholic, and he went on the Joe Rogan podcast, and here's a clip of them talking about the Shroud of Turin.
And I still have that faith, but as I got older, I came to it through intellect and through reading and putting things together in accounts, and then occurrences like in my own life, I mean, just recently they verified the Shroud of Turin. Have you seen that?
I've been reading about it, and I know that there's some contention, there's some discussion and debate about it, but they used to think that it was only a couple hundred years old.
Yeah.
And now they've changed that.
Yeah, they said no, it's back then.
They also don't understand how it was made, which to me is very fascinating because it's not paint. It's not. They don't know what caused the image itself and how that technology would have even been available.
It wasn't. No.
A couple thousand.
Yeah, so this was a really good conversation. Also very helpful, I'm sure, for Joe and many listeners to hear about some of the evidence for Christianity from somebody who was close to Catholicism, at least. And they talked about the Shroud of Turin, which is a relic that the Catholic Church has. And that is very cool. So that was a good conversation. I made a video about that as well, talking about refuting some of the conspiracy theories that Mel Gibson, promoted on this episode about the Pope, about the papacy. So he has a variety of voices that are, talking to him about these things. We don't know who else Joe Rogan is talking about. Like, just because he's had Wesley Huff on the show and Mel Gibson on the show, and he had also Stephen C. Meyer, who wrote Signature in the Cell, which is about how God is involved in evolution and things like that. Really interesting book, actually. I read some of it. And so he's had a variety of voices on the channel, but these aren't the only voices that are in his life. Like, I'm sure he has family that are so Catholic. I'm sure he has friends that are either Catholic or Protestant. He's obviously pretty close with Jordan Peterson, who seems to be leaning in either the direction of Orthodoxy or Catholicism. His wife is Catholic, and his best friend, I guess it's his best friend, Jonathan Peugeot, is Orthodox. So those are some of the two people that Jordan Peterson respects a lot, who might influence his decision. So Joe is hearing from a variety of voices. I don't think we need to freak out about, is he going to become Protestant? Is he going to become, Orthodox? Is he going to become a sedevacantist? God forbid. I think we can just pray for him. We can hope for the best. And the worst thing that we can do is to go out there and make a bunch of noise about, Joe, if you don't come to our side, you're going to go to hell or something like that. That's not going to be helpful at all. That is how you push people away. So everybody just relax, take a deep breath. Joe Rogan is discovering that Jesus Christ is who he claimed to be. That is a beautiful thing, wonderful thing. We hope he comes to the Catholic Church because we believe that the Catholic Church is the church that was founded by Jesus Christ. But we don't need to be annoying about it, is my only point. Now, I also don't think that the opposite of just pure, like I've seen people in comments under clips of that video say, like, who cares if he becomes Protestant or Catholic or whatever. I think it does matter ultimately, but I don't think it's helpful to be obnoxious about it right now. But this idea that, well, as long as I believe in Jesus, it doesn't really matter where I go. We've talked about why that's not true, especially in my video on apostolic succession. Jesus Christ founded a church, gave the apostles authority. Those apostles passed on that authority to their successors. It was understood in the scriptures where Jesus says, whoever rejects you rejects me, whoever hears you hears me. And in the early church, it was understood that if you are not with the bishop, you are not in the church. If you're not united to Peter, the successor of Peter, you're not considered you're not considered one of the faithful. So it's important, but it's not helpful as somebody is new to this world and is learning about these things for the first time, many of these things. It's not helpful to bombard him with all of these arguments right out of the gate. That's how you overwhelm someone and scare them out of Christianity altogether. So let's not do that. Let's just be excited that he's looking into this stuff, and let's pray for him. Prayer does actually do something. So prayer isn't a last resort. It's not something that we do when we just want to make ourselves feel better about our inability to help or something. Prayer actually helps. I have seen people convert because of prayer. I've converted because of prayer. So do it. I need to tell you about something very exciting, which is that we now have our own website. Yes. So if you go to cafe.sipswithsarah.com, you can go there, become a member, and you will get many exciting perks. For example, you'll get a regular email from me, and I'll be writing like a newsletter or a blog, and this is content that only you will receive. Nobody else will see it, which is pretty special. You'll also get early access to videos. You'll get access to monthly video chats with me and a special guest, and probably a lot of other cool stuff that I'm forgetting to mention here. But even more exciting than all of that is you can try it for free right now for 7 days. See if you like it. If you don't like it, you find it's not worth it, go ahead and cancel it. That's fine. But if you like it, you can just let it run its course and continue to support the channel. And I appreciate that very much. So go check it out. See if you like it. What do you got to lose? All right, get back to the video.